in Lynn Scott, there was a case involving prosecutorial misconduct. In Lynn Scott, there was this incident occurred in Oak Park. There was a man, he was in his early 20s, who lived in Oak Park, and he was married, and I believe I think he had a child. I'm not sure I don't recall now if he had a child, but he was married, and he had an exemplary background. A few doors from where he lived, a woman, she was in her early 20s, maybe 22, 23, I don't know. She was bludgeoned to death in her apartment with some type of iron instrument, and she was raped, sexually attacked. And it was a horrible crime scene. There was blood splattered all over, and she was naked because she was raped and killed. And it was reported in the newspaper the next day. So Mr. Lynn Scott reads the newspaper, tells his wife, you know, I had a dream last night about somebody being murdered. And he described his dream to his wife, and the dream that he described was very similar to the circumstances of that woman's death. So the police were interviewing everybody in the neighborhood, and they told them, they rang his bell, they interviewed him and his wife, and the police told the Lynn Scotts that if they had any suspicion or they heard of anything that might lead to maybe this particular crime, that they should call him. So Mr. Lynn Scott talked to his wife after the police left and said, you know, I had this dream. So his wife said, maybe you should call the police, maybe you should tell the police about your dream. So he went to the police, told them about his dream, and the police felt that his dream was so similar to the death of this woman that they felt that he was the perpetrator. So they arrested him, and he was indicted. And he was tried. And after he was arrested and indicted, the police did a thorough search of his house, a thorough search of the neighborhood. They found the weapon. It was a tire iron. The tire iron was found in the bushes of where the woman lived. So they examined the tire iron, they examined the clothing that Lynn Scott had in his house, and they examined his car to see if the tire iron was missing and everything. There was no evidence. There was no fingerprints on the tire iron, and there was no fingerprints of Lynn Scott in the house or anything. He said he didn't even know the woman. Police didn't have any evidence against him. They had his dream. And the prosecutor took the position, the police took the position, that when Lynn Scott told the police about this dream, he was really making a confession. So, but the dream was not a confession.
Right.
But they said that it was. They said it was a confession, which he didn't admit that he did it in his dream. So it was not a confession. It couldn't be a confession because he didn't admit that he did it. So there was a jury trial, and during the jury trial, the prosecutors, he voluntarily gave hair samples, semen samples, and the prosecutors blatantly misinterpreted the evidence. They said that the hair samples were were hair samples. His hair sample matched the hair sample that they found on the woman by her pubic area, which was not true. And they had taken a vaginal swab of the sperm of the vaginal area of the woman, and they said that the blood that they found matched his blood, which was not true. The real evidence was that a group of people could have had that same blood type, or a group of people could have had that same hair type. But there was no evidence that it was his hair.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah,
The same thing with the, this was, DNA evidence was just starting to come about around that time, so they misinterpreted the evidence in terms of the blood type and in terms of the hair samples, and they told the jury that this was a perfect match and all of that stuff.
Right.
And they didn't have any evidence of that. So the jury found him guilty, though, because of the prosecutorial misconduct of the prosecutors there. If he didn't get a fair trial, they pulled every stunt you can think of that was flagrant, in my opinion. And I put that in my opinion, too. And so they found him guilty. So I get the case, and I said, you can't convict the guy. You can't convict somebody just on the basis of a dream. You have to have some evidence. And there were some dissimilarities between the dream and the crime also. So I reversed the conviction outright. I said the state didn't prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, which doesn't happen very often. It's very seldom that it happens.
Yeah.
So I was one of the few judges that would do stuff like that. So I reversed it outright. So the state didn't prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So I reversed the conviction. Well, the Supreme Court took the case, the Illinois Supreme Court, and they reversed me. They reversed my opinion. But they said that when I wrote my opinion, I did not discuss whether or not there might have been trial errors, such as prosecutorial conduct. In my opinion, I did not discuss that issue because I felt I didn't have to, because I was of the opinion that the state didn't have enough evidence to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I didn't have to discuss the trial errors, in my opinion. So the Supreme Court reversed my conviction. They said that there was sufficient evidence to find him guilty, but they sent the case back to the appellate court. They sent it back to me, the appellate court, to rule on the issues of whether or not there was any trial errors. So I get the case the second time. And since the Supreme Court had decided that there was already sufficient evidence to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, they just wanted to know whether or not there might thought there was trial errors. The feeling was that I would just say that the opinion should be, the conviction should be affirmed.
Yeah.
But I didn't do that. Then I went through the prosecutorial misconduct of the prosecutors, which I really felt there was blatant prosecutorial misconduct, but for the part of the reasons that I stated. So I reversed the conviction a second time. For prosecutorial misconduct. And the Supreme Court took the case again. Only this time, they agreed with me.
Okay.
So then what happened is that there was a lot of public attention. This was an injustice to this guy. It was a terrible injustice to this person. What judges have to keep in mind, especially reviewing court judges, that when they get these cases, each case has a number. Well, the case is more than a number. There's a human being involved, not just a number. So you have to make sure that if you're sending somebody to prison for 40 years, then you better make certain that he deserves to go there.
Mhm.
And if you're not, you should do something about it. So, after I reversed it the second time, and the second time the Supreme Court agreed with me with the prosecutorial misconduct, the case got written up all in national magazines and stuff like that. And the governor looked at the case,
Mhm.
and the governor decided that Lynn Scott should be pardoned.
Mhm.
And they pardoned Lynn Scott based on innocence. That was the pardon by the governor.
Mhm.
So he was a free person. He never had to be retried again because the governor pardoned him. It was so bad, it was flagrant.
Mhm.
So he could have spent 40 years in prison
Right.
for something he didn't do. And that was, he was on his way to do that too.
Mhm.
That's how important prosecutorial misconduct can be in a case.
Right.
So that was one example of a case like that.
How do you believe a prosecutor might rationalize misconduct or other unethical actions?
How do they rationalize it?
Mhm.
If you're using the term properly, rationalization, okay.
Mhm.
They rationalize it because they think that a conviction is more important than justice. And that's a violation of their ethical duty. A prosecutor should not prosecute. Too often I felt that prosecutors were more concerned about getting a conviction than they were about getting justice.
Mhm.
And the prosecutor should not seek a conviction, he should seek justice. And that's a big problem with the mindset of many prosecutors,
Mhm.
I have found. When I say that, I don't mean all prosecutors.
Right.
Obviously, there are honest, good faith, very good prosecutors, so I don't mean to impugn
Mhm.
all of them. But there are too many that pursue a conviction at the expense of justice. They want to get another notch on their gun handle.
Mhm.
And that's a big problem.
So what do you think?
And that leads to prosecutorial misconduct. That's the reason for that. And so, in my opinion, every state's attorney should make sure that the prosecutors in their office are trained and make sure that their mindset is that they're pursuing justice and not a conviction when they're prosecuting someone.
Mhm. How do you think that prosecutorial misconduct should be handled?
Prosecutorial misconduct. Well, one of the reasons that one of the reasons why there are so many cases that go up for review involving prosecutorial misconduct is because the reviewing courts do two things that I was against, opposed to as much as I could as a judge, and that was admonishing the prosecutors and then affirming the conviction.
Mhm.
Well, that doesn't do very much. It accomplishes nothing because in the real world, the state will get away with anything, will attempt to get away with anything they can get away with in criminal cases.
Mhm.
That's my feeling. And so, if you just admonish them, means nothing.
Mhm.
What you've got to do is show them that they can't get away with it. And you show them that they can't get away with it, one is by reversing the conviction, and let them try the person over again.